Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual activity by a specific employee during non-working hours, potentially indicating a violation of company policy regarding intellectual property. As an employee who discovered this, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Ignore the findings and continue with normal operations, assuming the data is not significant enough to warrant attention. Option B. Proceed with analyzing the data to identify potential policy violations and gather more evidence before reporting. Option C. Share the findings with your immediate supervisor and a few trusted colleagues to discuss the implications. Option D. Immediately escalate the findings to the internal compliance or legal department and halt any further data analysis until proper authorization and guidelines are established. The correct answer is D. Immediately escalate the findings to the internal compliance or legal department and halt any further data analysis until proper authorization and guidelines are established. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a company's desire for efficiency and employee privacy rights. The monitoring system, while potentially useful for productivity, raises ethical concerns about surveillance and data misuse. The challenge lies in balancing legitimate business interests with the expectation of privacy and the potential for creating a climate of distrust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any monitoring is proportionate, transparent, and compliant with relevant regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately escalating the issue to the relevant internal compliance or legal department and halting any further data analysis until proper authorization and guidelines are established. This represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to regulatory frameworks and ethical principles. It ensures that any actions taken are legally sound and ethically defensible, preventing potential violations of data privacy laws and employee rights. This proactive step demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling and corporate governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with analyzing the data to identify potential policy violations without seeking further guidance. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses established protocols for data handling and privacy. It risks violating Foxconn's internal policies and potentially external regulations concerning employee data, leading to legal repercussions and damage to employee morale. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the findings and continue with normal operations, assuming the data is not significant enough to warrant attention. This is professionally unacceptable, as it demonstrates a disregard for potential compliance issues and a failure to act on information that could indicate a breach of policy or ethical standards. It also misses an opportunity to address potential problems proactively. A third incorrect approach is to share the findings with colleagues outside of the designated compliance or legal channels. This is professionally unacceptable due to the severe breach of confidentiality and data privacy. It exposes sensitive employee information inappropriately, violating trust and potentially leading to legal liabilities for both the individual and Foxconn. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they should identify the nature of the information and its potential implications. Second, they must consult relevant company policies and external regulations pertaining to data privacy, employee monitoring, and ethical conduct. Third, they should escalate the matter to the appropriate internal authority, such as the compliance department, legal counsel, or HR, to seek guidance and ensure proper procedures are followed. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and ethically sound, protecting both the individual and the organization. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that during a critical production phase for a new electronic device, a minor but consistent deviation in a component's performance is detected by a line technician. This deviation, if unaddressed, could potentially lead to intermittent functionality issues for end users, though it does not immediately pose a safety hazard. The production deadline is imminent, and reporting this deviation could cause significant delays and scrutiny from management. The technician is aware of the potential for minor rework to correct the issue, but this would require halting the line. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Attempt to discreetly adjust the component's parameters on the fly without formally reporting the deviation, hoping to mask the issue until after the current production run is complete. Option B. Complete the current production run and then submit a report detailing the deviation, suggesting potential fixes for future batches. Option C. Proceed with the production run, assuming the deviation is minor enough not to cause significant user issues, and address it in a future production batch if problems arise. Option D. Immediately halt the production line and report the deviation to the Quality Assurance Department and relevant management for assessment and resolution. Correct answer is D. Immediately halt the production line and report the deviation to the Quality Assurance Department and relevant management for assessment and resolution. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in a manufacturing and supply chain environment, where pressure to meet production targets can conflict with the integrity of quality control processes. The challenge lies in balancing business objectives with the ethical obligation to ensure product safety and compliance, especially when a deviation is discovered late in the process. The professional must navigate potential repercussions for reporting the issue while upholding their duty to the company, its customers, and regulatory standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately escalating the quality issue to the relevant quality assurance and management teams. This aligns with Foxconn's internal policies, which would likely mandate transparent reporting of nonconformances. Ethically, this demonstrates integrity and a commitment to product quality and safety, which are paramount in the electronics industry. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing product safety and manufacturing standards, e.g., ISO 9001 principles, even if not explicitly stated as the sole jurisdiction, are universally recognized best practices in quality management, require that defects impacting safety or performance are identified and addressed before products reach consumers. This proactive approach prevents potential harm, costly recalls, and reputational damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to attempt to conceal or downplay the defect to avoid delays and potential reprimand. This is a direct violation of ethical principles of honesty and integrity. It also breaches regulatory requirements that mandate accurate reporting of product quality issues. Such concealment can lead to severe consequences, including product recalls, legal liabilities, and significant damage to Foxconn's reputation. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with production while hoping the defect will not be noticed or will be minor. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for quality standards. It exposes customers to potentially faulty products, violating consumer protection principles and any applicable product safety regulations. This approach prioritizes short-term expediency over long-term compliance and ethical conduct. A third incorrect approach is to only report the issue after the production run is complete, without immediate action. While reporting is necessary, delaying the escalation and potential halt of production allows defective units to be manufactured, increasing the scope of the problem and the effort required to rectify it. This is less effective than immediate intervention and may still fall short of the prompt action required by quality management systems and ethical obligations to prevent the creation of nonconforming products. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such dilemmas should follow a structured decision-making process. First, identify the ethical and regulatory obligations at play. Second, assess the potential impact of the issue on stakeholders, customers, company, employees. Third, consider all available courses of action and their consequences. Fourth, consult relevant company policies and seek guidance from supervisors or ethics officers if unsure. The decision should always prioritize compliance, safety, and integrity, even if it presents short-term challenges. Question 3. Cost-benefit analysis shows that switching to a new, cheaper supplier for a critical component could save the company a significant amount of money annually. However, internal quality control reports indicate that this new supplier has a higher rate of producing components that do not meet stringent quality specifications, potentially leading to increased product defects and customer complaints. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Implement a more rigorous inspection process for components from the new supplier, accepting the higher defect rate as a trade-off for cost savings. Option B. Negotiate a lower price with the current supplier, highlighting the potential cost savings from switching to a new vendor. Option C. Reject the new supplier and continue with the current, more expensive supplier to ensure product quality and compliance with existing standards. Option D. Proceed with the new supplier to realize cost savings and address any quality issues that arise on a case-by-case basis. The correct answer is C. Reject the new supplier and continue with the current, more expensive supplier to ensure product quality and compliance with existing standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma where potential short-term financial gains conflict with long-term ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate benefits of a cost-saving measure against the potential risks of compromising product quality and customer trust, which could lead to significant reputational damage and legal repercussions. Careful judgment is required to identify and prioritize ethical considerations over purely financial ones. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established quality control standards and regulatory requirements. In the context of manufacturing and supply chain operations, particularly for a company like Foxconn, maintaining product integrity and ensuring compliance with relevant industry standards and customer specifications are paramount. This approach upholds the company's commitment to delivering reliable products, fosters customer loyalty, and mitigates legal and financial risks associated with substandard goods. It aligns with the ethical principle of integrity and the professional responsibility to act in the best interest of stakeholders, including customers and the company's long-term viability. An incorrect approach that involves using a less reputable supplier to cut costs, despite known quality concerns, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This action directly violates the principle of due diligence in supplier selection and quality assurance. It exposes the company to the risk of producing defective products, which could lead to product recalls, warranty claims, and severe damage to its brand reputation. Furthermore, it may contravene specific contractual obligations with clients regarding quality standards and could potentially violate consumer protection laws if defective products reach the market. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed with the cheaper supplier without informing relevant stakeholders about the quality risks, is also ethically unsound. This constitutes a failure of transparency and honesty. It deprives decision-makers of crucial information needed to make informed choices and potentially exposes the company to unforeseen liabilities. This lack of transparency can erode trust among internal teams and with external partners. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive risk assessment that goes beyond immediate cost savings. Professionals should 1. Identify all potential ethical and regulatory implications of a decision. 2. Consult relevant internal policies, industry best practices, and any applicable regulatory guidelines. 3. Seek input from relevant departments, such as quality assurance, legal, and procurement. 4. Evaluate the long-term consequences of each option, considering reputational impact, customer satisfaction, and legal exposure. 5. Prioritize ethical conduct and regulatory compliance, even if it means forgoing short-term financial benefits. 6. Document the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen course of action. Question 4. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a key supplier, with whom Foxconn has a long-standing relationship, has submitted a proposal for a new contract that is competitive but not demonstrably superior to a proposal from a new, innovative supplier. The incumbent supplier has subtly implied that their continued partnership is contingent on securing this new contract. How should the procurement team proceed to ensure the most beneficial outcome for Foxconn while maintaining ethical standards? Option A. Postpone the formal evaluation of the new supplier's proposal, allowing the incumbent supplier additional time to refine their offer and potentially match or exceed the new proposal's terms. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive and objective evaluation of both proposals against predefined, transparent criteria, prioritizing the proposal that offers the best overall value and strategic advantage to Foxconn, regardless of the supplier's history. Option C. Award the contract to the existing supplier to maintain the established relationship and avoid potential disruption, assuming their proposal is good enough. Option D. Discreetly adjust the evaluation weighting to give more importance to factors where the incumbent supplier has historically excelled, ensuring they are favored. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive and objective evaluation of both proposals against predefined, transparent criteria, prioritizing the proposal that offers the best overall value and strategic advantage to Foxconn, regardless of the supplier's history. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a supplier's desire to secure future business and the ethical obligation to maintain transparency and fairness in procurement processes. The pressure to favor a long-standing supplier, even when a new proposal offers superior value, can lead to compromised decision-making. Careful judgment is required to balance existing relationships with the company's fiduciary duty to obtain the best possible terms for Foxconn. The correct approach, which involves a thorough and objective evaluation of all proposals against predefined criteria, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of good corporate governance and ethical procurement, ensuring that decisions are based on merit and value rather than personal bias or historical relationships. Such a process upholds the integrity of Foxconn's supply chain and demonstrates a commitment to fair competition, which is crucial for long-term supplier relationships and operational efficiency. An incorrect approach that prioritizes the existing supplier solely based on past performance, without a rigorous comparison to the new proposal, fails to meet the company's obligation to seek the most advantageous terms. This could be seen as a breach of fiduciary duty and potentially violates internal procurement policies that mandate objective evaluation. Another incorrect approach, which involves subtly manipulating the evaluation criteria to favor the incumbent, is ethically unsound and constitutes a serious breach of integrity. This undermines the fairness of the process and could lead to legal or reputational damage if discovered. A further incorrect approach, which involves delaying the evaluation of the new proposal to allow the existing supplier to match or improve their offer, is also problematic. While seemingly aimed at securing a good deal, it circumvents the established procurement process and can be perceived as unfair to the new supplier, potentially damaging Foxconn's reputation as a fair business partner. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes objectivity, transparency, and adherence to established policies. This involves clearly defining evaluation criteria upfront, ensuring all evaluators understand and apply these criteria consistently, and documenting the entire decision-making process. When faced with competing proposals, a structured comparison against these criteria, with a focus on quantifiable benefits and risks, is essential. If a long-standing relationship is a factor, it should be considered as one element within a broader evaluation, not as a sole determinant. Question 5. The risk matrix shows a potential for significant delays in a critical component shipment due to an unforeseen quality control issue identified late in the manufacturing process. A supervisor suggests a minor deviation from the standard testing protocol, arguing it will expedite the process and prevent missing the delivery deadline, thereby avoiding contractual penalties. However, this deviation might slightly increase the risk of a component failing in the field. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Escalate the issue to the Quality Assurance Department and legal counsel to seek guidance on the acceptable level of risk and explore alternative solutions that maintain compliance. Option B. Discreetly inform the client about the potential delay and the proposed solution to gauge their acceptance of the risk. Option C. Implement the supervisor's suggested deviation to meet the deadline and avoid penalties, assuming the risk of field failure is minimal. Option D. Proceed with the standard testing protocol, accepting the risk of missing the deadline and incurring contractual penalties. The correct answer is A. Escalate the issue to the Quality Assurance Department and legal counsel to seek guidance on the acceptable level of risk and explore alternative solutions that maintain compliance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate business pressures and long-term ethical and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet production targets, coupled with the potential for financial penalties and reputational damage from noncompliance, creates a complex decision-making environment. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests. The correct approach, which involves escalating the issue through established channels and seeking clarification on the ethical implications of the proposed shortcut, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of corporate governance and ethical conduct expected of employees in any reputable organization, including those operating under the regulatory framework relevant to Foxconn's operations. Specifically, it upholds the duty of care and loyalty to the employer by ensuring that actions taken are both legal and ethical, thereby protecting the company from potential liabilities. This approach prioritizes transparency and adherence to established procedures, which are fundamental to maintaining trust and integrity within the business. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the shortcut without proper authorization or consultation would represent a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It bypasses established quality control and compliance protocols, potentially leading to product defects, safety issues, and violations of industry standards. Such an action could expose Foxconn to severe penalties, legal repercussions, and irreparable damage to its reputation. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the observation and hope it goes unnoticed, is equally problematic. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for potential risks. It fails to address a known issue that could have serious consequences, thereby abdicating the duty to act in the best interest of the company and its stakeholders. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a structured decision-making framework. This involves first identifying the ethical and regulatory implications of the observed situation. Next, they should consult relevant company policies, codes of conduct, and applicable regulations. If ambiguity exists or a conflict arises, the next step is to seek guidance from supervisors, legal counsel, or compliance officers. Documenting all observations, communications, and decisions is crucial for accountability and protection. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with ethical and legal standards. Question 6. During the evaluation of a new, potentially more sustainable component material for a key product line, a project manager is informed by the supplier that the material is environmentally friendly based on their internal testing. The project manager is under pressure to meet aggressive production deadlines for the next quarter. What is the most professionally responsible course of action regarding environmental compliance? Option A. Delay the introduction of the new material until a specific environmental regulation is enacted that explicitly addresses this type of component material. Option B. Initiate a formal review process with Foxconn's internal environmental compliance team and conduct a thorough environmental impact assessment for the new material before its integration into the production line. Option C. Assume that existing general environmental permits for the manufacturing facility will automatically cover the use of this new material, as it is presented as an improvement. Option D. Proceed with integrating the new material into the production line, relying on the supplier's assurance of its environmental friendliness, and address any potential compliance issues if they arise later. Correct answer is B. Initiate a formal review process with Foxconn's internal environmental compliance team and conduct a thorough environmental impact assessment for the new material before its integration into the production line. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in a global manufacturing environment like Foxconn. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid product development and market responsiveness with the imperative to adhere to evolving environmental regulations. The pressure to meet production targets can create a temptation to overlook, to prioritize compliance, especially when new materials or processes are involved. Careful judgment is required to ensure that innovation does not come at the expense of environmental responsibility and legal adherence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves proactively engaging with environmental compliance teams and conducting thorough impact assessments before introducing new materials, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of responsible manufacturing and corporate social responsibility. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of environmental regulation that mandate due diligence in assessing and mitigating potential harm to the environment. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of future penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. It demonstrates a commitment to sustainable practices, which is increasingly a key factor in supply chain partnerships and consumer trust. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach, which is to proceed with the new material based on anecdotal evidence of its environmental friendliness without formal verification, is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses established regulatory processes and relies on unsubstantiated claims, creating a significant risk of non-compliance. It fails to meet the due diligence requirements mandated by environmental laws, which often require documented evidence and expert assessment of environmental impact. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the introduction of the new material until a specific regulatory mandate is issued for it, is also professionally flawed. While it avoids immediate non-compliance, it demonstrates a reactive rather than proactive approach to environmental stewardship. This can lead to missed opportunities for innovation and market advantage, and it still carries the risk of unforeseen environmental consequences that could lead to future liabilities. It suggests a compliance-only mindset rather than a commitment to best practices. A third incorrect approach, which is to assume that existing general environmental permits cover any new material, is a dangerous assumption. Environmental regulations are often material-specific or process-specific. Relying on broad permits without verifying their applicability to the new material can lead to significant violations. This approach neglects the detailed requirements of environmental legislation that often necessitate specific approvals or notifications for the introduction of novel substances or processes. Professional reasoning. Professionals in such situations should adopt a risk-based, compliance-first mindset. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying potential regulatory implications of any proposed change. 2. Consulting with internal compliance and legal experts. 3. Conducting thorough due diligence, including environmental impact assessments. 4. Documenting all assessments and decisions. 5. Seeking necessary approvals or notifications before implementation. This systematic approach ensures that business objectives are pursued within the bounds of legal and ethical requirements. Question 7. Quality control measures reveal a consistent pattern of minor cosmetic defects on a specific component during the final assembly stage. The production team is under pressure to meet output targets. Which of the following approaches would best address this issue for long-term process optimization? Option A. Focus on retraining all assembly line operators on basic handling techniques, assuming operator error is the primary cause. Option B. Make significant, across-the-board adjustments to the assembly line machinery settings based on anecdotal feedback from supervisors. Option C. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis using a structured methodology to identify the underlying factors contributing to the defects, and then implement targeted corrective actions. Option D. Immediately implement a more stringent visual inspection protocol at the final assembly stage to catch all defects before they reach the customer. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis using a structured methodology to identify the underlying factors contributing to the defects, and then implement targeted corrective actions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in manufacturing environments where process optimization is crucial for efficiency and quality. The professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of a recurring defect without disrupting production unnecessarily or implementing a superficial fix. It requires a systematic approach that balances immediate problem-solving with long-term process improvement, considering potential impacts on cost, quality, and compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough root cause analysis, RCA, using established methodologies like the 5 whys or fishbone diagrams. This systematic investigation aims to uncover the fundamental reason behind the defect, rather than just addressing the symptom. By identifying the true root cause, the team can implement targeted corrective actions that prevent recurrence, leading to sustainable process optimization. This aligns with best professional practices in quality management, which emphasize proactive problem-solving and continuous improvement. In the context of a company like Foxconn, adherence to quality standards and efficient production are paramount, and RCA directly supports these objectives by minimizing waste and rework. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a quick fix without understanding the underlying issue is a regulatory and ethical failure because it fails to address the root cause, leading to potential recurrence of defects and continued waste. This can violate quality assurance standards and potentially impact product reliability, which could have implications for consumer safety and regulatory compliance depending on the product. Making broad, unverified changes to the entire production line without specific data or analysis is a failure because it is inefficient, costly, and risks introducing new problems. This approach lacks the rigor required for effective process optimization and can lead to non-compliance with operational efficiency targets and potentially introduce new quality risks. Focusing solely on blaming individual operators without investigating systemic issues is a failure because it ignores the possibility of process flaws, equipment malfunctions, or inadequate training. This can create a negative work environment and is ethically unsound, as it unfairly targets individuals rather than addressing the true source of the problem. It also hinders effective problem solving by overlooking critical contributing factors. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization challenges by first gathering data to understand the scope and nature of the problem. Then, they should employ structured RCA methodologies to identify the root cause. Based on the RCA findings, they should develop and implement targeted corrective and preventive actions. Finally, they must monitor the effectiveness of these actions and continuously seek further improvements, always considering the impact on quality, efficiency, and regulatory compliance. Question 8. Quality control measures reveal a persistent increase in minor cosmetic defects on a specific component across multiple assembly lines at Foxconn. These defects, while not impacting functionality, are becoming a significant concern for brand perception and customer satisfaction. What is the most effective and responsible approach to address this issue? Option A. Introduce a series of uncoordinated, ad hoc adjustments to various machine settings and material suppliers simultaneously across all affected lines to see which changes yield the desired results. Option B. Immediately implement a company-wide retraining program for all assembly line operators, focusing on meticulous handling of the component, assuming operator error is the primary cause. Option C. Conduct a phased investigation, starting with establishing a baseline defect rate, and then systematically isolating potential contributing factors such as material batches, machine calibration, and environmental conditions before implementing targeted corrective actions. Option D. Halt all production of the affected component for an extended period to allow a dedicated team to perform an in-depth, comprehensive root cause analysis without any time constraints. Correct answer is C. Conduct a phased investigation, starting with establishing a baseline defect rate and then systematically isolating potential contributing factors such as material batches, machine calibration, and environmental conditions before implementing targeted corrective actions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in manufacturing environments where process optimization is crucial for efficiency and quality. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of a recurring defect without disrupting ongoing production significantly or compromising the integrity of the data collected. A hasty or poorly designed investigation can lead to wasted resources, incorrect conclusions, and continued production of faulty goods, impacting customer satisfaction and Foxconn's reputation. The need for a systematic, data-driven approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, multi-stage investigation that prioritizes data collection and analysis before implementing changes. This aligns with best practices in process optimization and quality management, which emphasize understanding the problem thoroughly before attempting a solution. By first establishing a baseline, then systematically isolating variables, and finally validating changes, the process ensures that any implemented improvements are effective and sustainable. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing new problems and maximizes the likelihood of achieving the desired outcome, adhering to principles of continuous improvement often embedded in manufacturing quality standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately implementing a broad set of changes across multiple production lines based on initial assumptions. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses the necessary data-driven validation required by quality management systems. It risks introducing new, unforeseen defects or inefficiencies without understanding the true root cause, potentially violating internal quality standards and external customer expectations for product reliability. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on operator error without investigating potential equipment or material issues. This is a flawed investigative strategy that can lead to unfair blame and a failure to address systemic problems. Ethically, it's unfair to place blame without thorough investigation. From a process optimization standpoint, it neglects potential root causes that lie outside of human action, thus failing to achieve true optimization and potentially violating principles of fair labor practices and comprehensive quality assurance. A third incorrect approach is to halt production entirely to conduct an exhaustive, long-term study. While thoroughness is important, an indefinite halt can have severe economic consequences and may not be the most efficient use of resources. This approach fails to balance the need for investigation with the operational realities of a high-volume manufacturing environment. It can lead to significant financial losses and may not be aligned with the agile operational principles expected in the industry, potentially impacting contractual obligations and market responsiveness. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured problem-solving framework. This typically involves 1. Problem definition. Clearly articulate the defect and its impact. 2. Data collection. Gather relevant data on defect rates, process parameters, materials, and operator actions. 3. Root cause analysis. Utilize tools like Ishikawa diagrams or Pareto charts to identify potential causes. 4. Solution development. Brainstorm and select potential solutions based on the identified root causes. 5. Implementation and testing. Implement changes in a controlled manner, starting with pilot tests. 6. Verification. Monitor results to confirm the effectiveness of the changes and ensure no new issues arise. 7. Standardization. Document and implement successful changes across relevant processes. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, efficient, and aligned with quality and operational objectives. Question 9. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor quality deviation if the proposed automated assembly line modification is implemented without further validation. However, the modification is projected to significantly reduce labor costs and increase throughput. What is the most appropriate next step to ensure process optimization aligns with quality and compliance standards? Option A. Conduct a pilot run of the modification on a small, controlled segment of the production line to gather data on actual deviation rates and performance before full rollout. Option B. Immediately implement the modification across all lines to realize cost savings and throughput gains, assuming the risk matrix accurately reflects the low probability of significant issues. Option C. Proceed with the modification, but implement enhanced post-production quality checks to catch any deviations. Option D. Halt the modification process entirely due to the identified risk, and explore alternative cost-saving measures that do not involve process changes. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the modification, but implement enhanced post-production quality checks to catch any deviations. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing efficiency gains with potential impacts on product quality and compliance, especially within the context of a large-scale manufacturing environment like Foxconn. The pressure to optimize processes can sometimes lead to overlooking critical control points or introducing new risks if not managed rigorously. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process improvements do not compromise the integrity of the manufacturing process or violate any applicable regulations or internal quality standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and data-driven evaluation of proposed changes by involving cross-functional teams, conducting thorough risk assessments, and validating improvements through pilot testing. It ensures that potential negative consequences are identified and mitigated before full implementation. This aligns with principles of good manufacturing practice and quality management systems, which emphasize continuous improvement while maintaining control and compliance. The focus on measurable outcomes and documentation also supports accountability and future learning. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on quality control mechanisms would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a failure to meet product specifications, increased defect rates, and potential non-compliance with customer requirements or industry standards. Such an approach would represent an ethical failure by prioritizing short-term financial gains over long-term product integrity and customer satisfaction. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established change control procedures and implementing modifications directly would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This undermines the integrity of the quality management system, makes it impossible to track the impact of changes, and could lead to unforeseen issues that are difficult to diagnose and rectify. It also demonstrates a lack of respect for established protocols designed to ensure product safety and quality. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. Clearly define the problem or opportunity for optimization, identify all potential stakeholders and their concerns, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, explore multiple solutions, evaluate each solution against defined criteria, including quality, cost, timeline, and compliance, Select the most robust solution. Plan for implementation with pilot testing and validation, and establish mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and feedback. This iterative and controlled process ensures that improvements are sustainable and do not introduce unacceptable risks. Question 10. Assessment of the most effective strategy for improving the efficiency of an assembly line at Foxconn, considering the need to maintain product quality and adhere to established manufacturing protocols. Option A. Introduce significant changes to the assembly sequence based on a recent industry trend report, without consulting the quality assurance department. Option B. Conduct a detailed analysis of the current assembly process, gathering data on cycle times, defect rates, and material flow to identify specific areas for improvement and propose data-backed solutions. Option C. Immediately implement a new, faster assembly technique observed on a competitor's production line without prior testing or validation. Option D. Rely on the experience of long-serving line workers to make ad hoc adjustments to the process based on their intuition about where delays occur. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed analysis of the current assembly process, gathering data on cycle times, defect rates, and material flow to identify specific areas for improvement and propose data-backed solutions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in manufacturing environments like Foxconn, balancing the need for rapid production with the imperative to maintain high quality and adhere to established process standards. The pressure to meet demanding output targets can lead to shortcuts or deviations from documented procedures, potentially impacting product integrity and compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing process improvements that enhance efficiency without compromising quality or violating any applicable regulatory frameworks or internal company policies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach focuses on a systematic, data-driven review of the existing process. This involves understanding the current workflow, identifying bottlenecks or inefficiencies, and then proposing changes based on evidence and best practices in process optimization. This aligns with principles of continuous improvement, often embedded in quality management systems, like ISO 9001, which is relevant to global manufacturing operations, and lean manufacturing methodologies. Such an approach ensures that any proposed changes are well justified, measurable, and likely to yield sustainable improvements, thereby upholding product quality and operational integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach might involve implementing changes based solely on anecdotal evidence or the immediate perception of a bottleneck without thorough investigation. This risks introducing new problems or overlooking critical quality control points, potentially leading to non-compliance with product specifications or manufacturing standards. This could be considered a failure in due diligence and a disregard for systematic problem solving. Another incorrect approach could be to prioritize speed of implementation over thoroughness, such as adopting a new technique without adequate testing or validation. This could result in unforeseen defects, increased rework, or even safety hazards, all of which would be contrary to responsible manufacturing practices and could lead to regulatory scrutiny or customer dissatisfaction. A third incorrect approach might be to bypass established change management protocols or to implement changes without consulting relevant stakeholders, such as quality assurance teams or production line supervisors. This can lead to inconsistencies, resistance to adoption, and a breakdown in communication, undermining the overall effectiveness of any optimization effort and potentially violating internal governance procedures. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should employ a structured problem-solving framework. This typically involves defining the problem, gathering data, analyzing root causes, developing potential solutions, evaluating and selecting the best solution, implementing it, and then monitoring its effectiveness. This iterative process, often referred to as PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, ensures that improvements are made thoughtfully and sustainably, adhering to both operational efficiency goals and quality standards. Question 11. Comparative studies suggest that process optimization in large-scale manufacturing can significantly impact efficiency and output. When a new, seemingly straightforward method for streamlining a component assembly line is proposed, what is the most professionally responsible approach to its adoption? Option A. Immediately roll out the new process across all relevant assembly lines to maximize potential efficiency gains as quickly as possible. Option B. Conduct a pilot program on a limited section of the assembly line, collecting comprehensive data on key performance indicators, and conducting a thorough risk assessment before considering wider implementation. Option C. Implement the new process on one assembly line and observe the results informally, making adjustments as needed based on anecdotal feedback from operators. Option D. Reject the proposed optimization outright, assuming that existing assembly line processes are already at their peak efficiency. The correct answer is B. Conduct a pilot program on a limited section of the assembly line, collecting comprehensive data on key performance indicators, and conducting a thorough risk assessment before considering wider implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in manufacturing environments like Foxconn, where the drive for efficiency must be balanced with maintaining product quality and adhering to established operational procedures. The introduction of a new process optimization technique, even if seemingly beneficial, requires careful evaluation to ensure it doesn't inadvertently compromise existing standards or introduce new risks. The professional challenge lies in discerning between genuine improvements that align with operational excellence and those that might be superficial or introduce unintended negative consequences, potentially impacting compliance and stakeholder trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven evaluation of the proposed process optimization. This includes pilot testing, rigorous data collection on key performance indicators, KPI, such as defect rates, cycle times, and resource utilization, and a thorough risk assessment. This methodology ensures that any changes are validated before full-scale implementation, minimizing disruption and potential negative impacts. It aligns with principles of continuous improvement and responsible operational management, which are implicitly expected in a large-scale manufacturing context. Adherence to internal quality management systems and any relevant industry standards, though not explicitly stated as a jurisdiction here, the principle of robust internal controls is universal, is paramount. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately implement the new process optimization based solely on anecdotal evidence or the perceived simplicity of the change. This bypasses essential validation steps, risking increased defect rates, production delays, or even safety concerns if the optimization affects worker procedures without proper training or risk assessment. This approach demonstrates a failure in due diligence and a disregard for established quality control protocols, which are fundamental to maintaining operational integrity and product reliability. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the proposed optimization without proper investigation, perhaps due to resistance to change or a belief that existing processes are already optimal. This can stifle innovation and prevent the adoption of potentially beneficial improvements. Ethically, it can lead to missed opportunities for efficiency gains and cost savings, which could indirectly impact the company's competitiveness and, by extension, its workforce. It also fails to foster a culture of continuous improvement. A third incorrect approach is to implement the optimization in a piecemeal fashion across different production lines, without a coordinated strategy or consistent monitoring. This can lead to inconsistencies in output, difficulty in troubleshooting issues, and an inability to accurately assess the overall impact of the change. It undermines the integrity of the data collected and makes it challenging to draw reliable conclusions about the optimization's effectiveness, potentially leading to suboptimal resource allocation and continued inefficiencies. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization with a structured methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem or opportunity, brainstorming potential solutions, evaluating these solutions based on feasibility, impact, and risk, selecting the most promising approach, piloting and testing it rigorously, implementing it systematically, and then monitoring and refining it. This iterative process ensures that changes are data-driven, well understood, and contribute positively to the organization's goals while mitigating potential downsides. Question 12. Governance review demonstrates that Foxconn is considering a significant expansion of its manufacturing operations, which will necessitate onboarding a substantial number of new suppliers. What is the most responsible and compliant approach to ensure ethical labor practices and environmental standards are upheld throughout this expanded supply chain? Option A. Proactively engage with potential new suppliers to conduct thorough assessments of their compliance with labor and environmental standards before finalizing any business agreements. Option B. Prioritize immediate cost savings and production volume increases by onboarding suppliers quickly, addressing any compliance issues only if they arise and are reported. Option C. Rely exclusively on self-declarations from potential suppliers regarding their adherence to labor and environmental regulations, without independent verification. Option D. Focus solely on the technical capabilities and pricing of potential suppliers, deferring any discussions or assessments of labor and environmental compliance to a later stage, after initial production has commenced. Correct answer is A. Proactively engage with potential new suppliers to conduct thorough assessments of their compliance with labor and environmental standards before finalizing any business agreements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's strategic growth objectives and the potential for unintended negative consequences on its supply chain partners. Foxconn, as a major global manufacturer, relies on a complex network of suppliers. Ensuring ethical and sustainable practices throughout this network is crucial for maintaining its reputation, complying with evolving regulations, and fostering long-term stability. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate financial pressures of expansion with the responsibility to uphold ethical standards and regulatory compliance across diverse supplier relationships. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves proactively engaging with suppliers to assess their compliance with labor and environmental standards before expanding business, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of responsible sourcing and due diligence, which are increasingly mandated by regulatory frameworks and expected by stakeholders. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to adhering to international labor standards, such as those promoted by the International Labor Organization, which often inform national regulations and environmental protection laws. By conducting thorough assessments, Foxconn demonstrates a commitment to preventing human rights abuses, ensuring fair working conditions, and minimizing environmental impact within its supply chain, thereby mitigating legal and reputational risks. This proactive stance is essential for sustainable business operations and aligns with the spirit of corporate social responsibility. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize immediate cost savings and production volume increases without adequately vetting new suppliers for compliance. This would represent a failure to conduct proper due diligence, potentially leading to violations of labor laws, e.g., regarding child labor, forced labor, or unsafe working conditions and environmental regulations. Such a failure could result in significant fines, legal action, reputational damage, and disruption to operations if non-compliant suppliers are identified and sanctioned by authorities or consumers. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on self-declarations from suppliers regarding their compliance without independent verification. This approach is insufficient as it does not provide assurance that stated practices are actually being followed. It creates a significant risk of overlooking systemic issues within a supplier's operations, leading to potential breaches of ethical codes and regulatory requirements. This could expose Foxconn to accusations of complicity in unethical practices. A third incorrect approach would be to address compliance issues only after they have been reported or discovered through audits, rather than as a preventative measure during the onboarding of new suppliers. This reactive stance is less effective and more costly than a proactive one. It suggests a lack of commitment to embedding ethical and regulatory standards into the core business strategy, and could lead to significant remediation efforts and damage to stakeholder trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to supply chain management. This involves identifying potential ethical and regulatory risks associated with new suppliers and implementing robust due diligence processes to mitigate these risks. Key steps include developing clear supplier codes of conduct that align with relevant laws and ethical standards, conducting thorough pre-qualification assessments, performing regular audits, both announced and unannounced, and establishing mechanisms for grievance reporting and remediation. Continuous monitoring and engagement with suppliers are crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and foster a culture of responsibility throughout the supply chain. Question 13. To address the challenge of meeting demanding production schedules while ensuring compliance with labor laws and maintaining positive stakeholder relations, what is the most appropriate course of action for Foxconn's management? Option A. Focus exclusively on maximizing output by temporarily relaxing certain safety protocols to meet urgent delivery deadlines, with a plan to address any issues retroactively. Option B. Issue a company-wide directive to increase working hours without consulting employee representatives or assessing the impact on worker well-being, citing the need to meet market demand. Option C. Conduct a superficial internal review of safety procedures and dismiss worker grievances as minor inconveniences to avoid disrupting the production flow. Option D. Proactively engage with labor representatives and relevant government agencies to discuss production pressures and collaboratively explore solutions that uphold worker safety and regulatory standards. The correct answer is D. Proactively engage with labor representatives and relevant government agencies to discuss production pressures and collaboratively explore solutions that uphold worker safety and regulatory standards. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's immediate financial pressures and its long-term ethical and regulatory obligations. Foxconn, as a global manufacturing giant, operates within a complex web of stakeholder expectations, including investors seeking returns, employees seeking fair treatment and safe working conditions, and regulatory bodies enforcing labor and environmental standards. The pressure to meet production targets while potentially cutting corners on safety or worker welfare creates a significant ethical dilemma. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests without compromising legal compliance or the company's reputation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes transparent communication and proactive engagement with all relevant stakeholders. This involves acknowledging the production pressures while simultaneously reaffirming commitment to worker safety and regulatory compliance. By initiating dialogue with labor representatives and relevant government agencies, Foxconn demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and a willingness to address concerns collaboratively. This approach aligns with principles of corporate social responsibility and good governance, which are increasingly scrutinized by investors and the public. It fosters trust and can lead to sustainable solutions that benefit both the company and its workforce, while also ensuring adherence to labor laws and industry best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing production targets above all else, leading to a potential disregard for safety protocols and worker well-being. This approach risks severe regulatory penalties, including fines and operational shutdowns, as well as significant reputational damage. Ethically, it violates fundamental principles of worker safety and human rights. Another incorrect approach is to solely rely on internal audits without external validation or stakeholder consultation. While internal audits are important, they may not always identify systemic issues or reflect the lived experiences of workers. This can lead to a false sense of security and a failure to address underlying problems, potentially resulting in a breach of labor regulations and ethical standards. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss stakeholder concerns as mere complaints without proper investigation. This reactive and dismissive stance ignores potential risks and can escalate issues, leading to labor disputes, negative media attention, and damage to Foxconn's brand image. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold ethical responsibilities towards its workforce and the wider community. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such dilemmas should adopt a framework that emphasizes proactive risk management, ethical decision-making, and stakeholder engagement. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their interests. 2. Understanding the applicable regulatory framework and ethical principles. 3. Assessing the potential risks and consequences of different actions. 4. Seeking diverse perspectives and engaging in open dialogue. 5. Prioritizing solutions that are legally compliant, ethically sound, and sustainable in the long term. Question 14. Quality control measures reveal a statistically significant increase in minor cosmetic defects on a batch of electronic components manufactured by Foxconn. While these defects do not immediately impact the functional performance of the end product, they are outside the agreed-upon aesthetic specifications with a key client. What is the most professional and ethically responsible course of action for the Foxconn quality assurance team to take? Option A. Implement a temporary reduction in the frequency of visual inspections for cosmetic flaws to offset potential production delays caused by the increased defect rate, assuming the functional integrity remains unaffected. Option B. Initiate an immediate root cause analysis to identify the source of the cosmetic defects and implement corrective actions to prevent recurrence, while also communicating transparently with the client about the findings and the steps being taken. Option C. Immediately halt production of the affected components and demand a review of the client's aesthetic specifications, suggesting they are overly stringent for mass production. Option D. Advise the client that minor cosmetic imperfections are a normal part of high-volume manufacturing and that the current defect rate is within acceptable industry tolerances without further internal investigation. The correct answer is B. Initiate an immediate root cause analysis to identify the source of the cosmetic defects and implement corrective actions to prevent recurrence, while also communicating transparently with the client about the findings and the steps being taken. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate cost-saving pressures and the long-term imperative of maintaining product quality and brand reputation. Foxconn, as a major global manufacturer, faces scrutiny from its clients and end consumers regarding the reliability and safety of its products. A decision to compromise on quality control to reduce costs, even if seemingly minor, can have cascading negative effects, including increased product recalls, customer dissatisfaction, damage to Foxconn's reputation, and potential regulatory noncompliance if specific product standards are not met. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing financial targets with ethical responsibilities and the company's commitment to delivering high-quality goods. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which prioritizes a thorough investigation into the root cause of the quality deviations before implementing any changes, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of good manufacturing practice and quality management system, which are often implicitly or explicitly governed by industry standards and client contractual obligations. Ethically, it demonstrates a commitment to product integrity and customer safety. From a regulatory perspective, it ensures that any corrective actions are targeted and effective, preventing recurrence and maintaining compliance with any applicable product safety or performance standards that Foxconn's clients may require. This proactive and analytical approach minimizes the risk of further quality issues and avoids potentially costly and reputation-damaging shortcuts. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately implement cost-cutting measures on the quality control process itself, such as reducing inspection frequency or personnel. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly contravenes the implied or explicit contractual obligations to deliver products meeting agreed-upon quality standards. Ethically, it prioritizes short-term financial gain over product safety and customer trust, potentially leading to the distribution of defective products. This could also violate specific industry regulations related to product quality and safety, leading to fines or legal action. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the quality control findings as minor anomalies without further investigation, assuming they will not impact end product performance. This is an ethical lapse and a potential regulatory failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential downstream consequences of even small deviations. If these anomalies, when aggregated or under specific operating conditions, lead to product failure, Foxconn could be held liable for breaches of warranty or product safety regulations. It also undermines the purpose of a quality control system, which is to identify and rectify issues before they reach the customer. A third incorrect approach would be to shift the burden of identifying these quality issues to the client without informing them of the internal findings. This is a severe ethical breach and could have significant regulatory implications. It is dishonest and erodes trust between Foxconn and its clients. Depending on the contractual agreements, failing to disclose known quality deviations could be considered a breach of contract and potentially violate regulations, requiring transparency in manufacturing processes and product quality. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should adopt a structured problem-solving approach. First, acknowledge the findings and their potential impact. Second, initiate a comprehensive root cause analysis to understand why the quality deviations are occurring. This involves engaging relevant engineering, manufacturing, and quality assurance teams. Third, evaluate the severity and potential impact of the deviations on product performance, safety, and customer satisfaction. Fourth, Develop and implement targeted corrective and preventive actions based on the root cause analysis. Fifth, monitor the effectiveness of these actions and continuously improve the quality control processes. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are data-driven, ethically sound, and compliant with all applicable standards and regulations, thereby protecting the company's reputation and long-term viability. Question 15. Benchmark analysis indicates that a key supplier, eager to secure a long-term partnership, has presented a draft contract for a critical component. The supplier's representative has expressed significant enthusiasm for the potential business volume and has highlighted the benefits of a stable, long-term relationship. However, the contract terms themselves require careful examination to ensure they are advantageous and protective of Foxconn's interests. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach for Foxconn's procurement team in this situation? Option A. Rely on the supplier's verbal assurances of future flexibility and favorable adjustments to the contract terms once the initial agreement is signed. Option B. Immediately accept the contract as presented, given the supplier's enthusiasm and the potential for a long-term relationship, to secure the supply chain quickly. Option C. Prioritize the supplier's eagerness and the prospect of a long-term deal over the specific details of the contract, assuming the supplier's intentions are purely beneficial. Option D. Proceed with a comprehensive review of the contract by legal and financial experts to identify potential risks and negotiate terms that are fair and beneficial to Foxconn. The correct answer is B. Immediately accept the contract as presented, given the supplier's enthusiasm and the potential for a long-term relationship, to secure the supply chain quickly. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a supplier's desire to secure a long-term contract and the potential for that contract to impose unfavorable terms on Foxconn if not meticulously reviewed. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the strategic imperative of securing a reliable supply chain with the fiduciary duty to protect the company's financial interests and ensure compliance with corporate governance principles. Careful judgment is required to avoid hasty decisions that could lead to significant financial or operational risks. The correct approach, which involves a thorough due diligence process including legal and financial review of the proposed contract terms, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of sound corporate governance and risk management, which are implicitly expected in any hiring assessment for a company like Foxconn. Specifically, it adheres to the general ethical obligation of acting in the best interest of the company, ensuring that contracts are fair, legally sound, and do not expose the company to undue risk. While the exam syllabus for Foxconn, high precision industry, hiring assessment test does not specify a particular jurisdiction's laws, general principles of contract law and corporate responsibility are universally applicable. This approach ensures that all stakeholders, including shareholders and employees, are protected from potential financial losses or operational disruptions stemming from poorly negotiated agreements. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the supplier's enthusiasm and the potential for a long-term relationship without scrutinizing the contract terms would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the company's financial well-being. It could lead to the company being bound by unfavorable pricing, restrictive clauses, or inadequate performance guarantees, potentially violating the duty of care owed to the company. Another incorrect approach, which might involve accepting the contract based on a verbal assurance of future flexibility from the supplier, demonstrates a failure to adhere to the principle of written agreements and robust contractual frameworks. This reliance on informal promises is a significant ethical and professional lapse, as it bypasses established procedures for contract finalization and leaves the company vulnerable to disputes and misinterpretations. Such an approach neglects the importance of clear, legally binding documentation, which is fundamental to commercial transactions and risk mitigation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the objectives of the engagement with the supplier. Second, conduct comprehensive due diligence on the supplier's capabilities, financial stability, and reputation. Third, engage legal and financial experts to thoroughly review all proposed contract terms, identifying potential risks and areas for negotiation. Fourth, negotiate terms that are mutually beneficial and protect the company's interests. Finally, Ensure all agreements are formally documented and executed in accordance with company policy and relevant legal frameworks. Question 16. The control framework reveals a potential supplier for a critical component has exerted significant pressure to expedite the contract award process, citing aggressive production targets. While the supplier's initial proposal appears competitive, the expedited timeline raises concerns about the thoroughness of the due diligence and risk assessment. Which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of Foxconn's procurement process and stakeholder interests? Option A. Reject the supplier outright due to the perceived pressure and immediately seek alternative suppliers to avoid any potential complications. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the supplier's proposal, including a detailed risk assessment and verification of their capabilities, while communicating the standard process timeline to the supplier. Option C. Delegate the decision to the sales team responsible for managing the supplier relationship, as they have the most direct understanding of the supplier's needs. Option D. Proceed with the contract award immediately to meet production targets, relying on the supplier's reputation and assurances. Correct answer is D. Proceed with the contract award immediately to meet production targets, relying on the supplier's reputation and assurances. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a supplier's desire to secure a significant contract and the ethical imperative to maintain the integrity of the procurement process. Foxconn, as a global manufacturing leader, relies on robust and transparent supply chain management. The pressure to meet production targets can create an environment where shortcuts might be considered, but adherence to established control frameworks and ethical guidelines is paramount. The challenge lies in navigating these pressures while upholding Foxconn's commitment to fair dealing and compliance. The correct approach, which involves a thorough review of the supplier's proposal against established procurement policies and risk assessment criteria, represents best professional practice. This aligns with general principles of good corporate governance and supply chain management, which emphasize due diligence, fairness, and risk mitigation. Specifically, it upholds the ethical obligation to avoid conflicts of interest and to ensure that supplier selection is based on objective merit, not undue influence or pressure. This systematic approach minimizes the risk of engaging with a supplier who may not be the most suitable or who might pose future compliance or operational risks. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate contract signing without adequate due diligence would represent a significant ethical failure. This could lead to engaging with a supplier who does not meet quality standards, has a history of noncompliance, or poses financial or reputational risks. Such an action would violate the principle of acting in the best interest of the company and could expose Foxconn to legal repercussions or operational disruptions. Another incorrect approach, which involves accepting the supplier's assurances without independent verification, demonstrates a lack of professional skepticism and a failure to adhere to the control framework's requirement for evidence-based decision-making. This can lead to overlooking critical issues and making decisions based on incomplete or biased information, thereby undermining the integrity of the procurement process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly identify the objectives and constraints of the situation. Second, consult relevant internal policies, procedures, and ethical guidelines. Third, gather all necessary information and conduct thorough due diligence. Fourth, assess the risks and potential consequences of each available course of action. Fifth, seek advice from relevant stakeholders or departments, e.g., legal, compliance, procurement specialists, if uncertainties exist. Finally, make a decision that is justifiable, defensible, and aligns with the company's values and regulatory obligations. Question 17. Consider a scenario where Foxconn is facing increasing pressure from environmental advocacy groups and local communities regarding the waste generated by its manufacturing processes. While current regulations are being met, there is a growing expectation for more advanced waste reduction and recycling initiatives. The company's management is debating how to respond, with options ranging from minimal compliance to significant investment in new technologies. Which approach best balances regulatory adherence, stakeholder expectations, and long-term corporate responsibility? Option A. Lobby for the relaxation of existing environmental regulations to reduce the perceived burden of waste management. Option B. Explore opportunities to shift production to regions with less stringent environmental regulations to minimize compliance costs. Option C. Proactively invest in state-of-the-art waste management and recycling technologies, and transparently report on environmental performance and progress towards sustainability goals. Option D. Continue to meet current regulatory requirements for waste disposal and engage in public relations efforts to highlight compliance. The correct answer is C. Proactively invest in state-of-the-art waste management and recycling technologies, and transparently report on environmental performance and progress towards sustainability goals. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's immediate financial interests and its long-term ethical and regulatory obligations to its stakeholders, particularly concerning environmental impact. Foxconn, as a global manufacturing giant, operates within a complex web of regulations and stakeholder expectations. The challenge lies in balancing the pressure to maintain competitive pricing and production efficiency with the imperative to invest in sustainable practices that may incur upfront costs but yield long-term benefits and mitigate reputational and legal risks. Careful judgment is required to identify and prioritize stakeholder interests, understanding that neglecting environmental concerns can lead to significant penalties, loss of public trust, and operational disruptions. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes proactive engagement with environmental regulations and stakeholder concerns. By investing in advanced waste management technologies and transparently reporting on environmental performance, Foxconn demonstrates a commitment to corporate social responsibility, CSR, and sustainable development. This aligns with evolving global regulatory frameworks that increasingly hold corporations accountable for their environmental footprint. Such an approach not only mitigates legal and financial risks associated with non-compliance, but also enhances brand reputation, attracts environmentally conscious investors and consumers, and fosters stronger relationships with local communities and regulatory bodies. This proactive stance is ethically sound, as it acknowledges the company's responsibility to minimize harm to the environment and future generations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on meeting minimum regulatory compliance without proactive investment in advanced technologies would be professionally unacceptable. This approach risks falling behind evolving standards, potentially leading to future noncompliance and penalties. It also fails to address the broader ethical imperative of environmental stewardship and misses opportunities to build stakeholder trust. Another incorrect approach, which involves lobbying to weaken environmental regulations, is ethically problematic and professionally risky. While legal, such actions can be perceived as prioritizing profit over public good, leading to significant reputational damage and alienating stakeholders. It undermines the principle of responsible corporate citizenship and can invite increased scrutiny and regulatory backlash. A third incorrect approach, which involves relocating production to regions with less stringent environmental laws, represents a failure of ethical leadership and a short-sighted strategy. This practice, often termed pollution havens, can lead to severe environmental degradation in those regions and is increasingly subject to international criticism and potential sanctions. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to global environmental responsibility and can result in long-term reputational harm and supply chain risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive stakeholder analysis, identifying all parties affected by the company's operations and their respective interests. This should be followed by a thorough assessment of current and anticipated regulatory requirements, both domestically and internationally. A risk-benefit analysis of different environmental strategies, considering both financial implications and long-term reputational and ethical impacts, is crucial. Professionals should then develop a proactive strategy that not only ensures compliance, but also embraces sustainability as a core business value, fostering transparency and open communication with all stakeholders. Question 18. The investigation demonstrates that a key supplier, crucial for a new product line, is also in discussions with a direct competitor of Foxconn regarding a similar, long-term supply agreement. Foxconn is concerned that if the supplier enters into an agreement with the competitor, it could limit Foxconn's future supply options and potentially lead to increased costs. Foxconn is considering offering the supplier preferential terms and a guaranteed volume commitment significantly above market rates to secure an exclusive long-term contract. Option A. Inform the supplier that if they do not accept Foxconn's exclusive offer, Foxconn will cease all current business with them and explore legal avenues to prevent them from supplying competitors. Option B. Immediately offer the supplier a significantly inflated price and guaranteed volume commitment to secure an exclusive, long-term contract, ensuring no competitor can access their services. Option C. Advise the supplier that Foxconn is aware of their discussions with competitors and suggest they prioritize Foxconn's offer to maintain a strong relationship, without explicitly detailing the terms of Foxconn's proposed contract. Option D. Propose a long-term contract with the supplier that includes a fair market price, clear performance metrics, and a clause for periodic review, while also exploring alternative suppliers to mitigate supply chain risk. The correct answer is D. Propose a long-term contract with the supplier that includes a fair market price, clear performance metrics, and a clause for periodic review, while also exploring alternative suppliers to mitigate supply chain risk. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a supplier's desire to secure a long-term contract and the potential for that contract to create an unfair competitive advantage, impacting market fairness and potentially violating principles of good corporate governance. Careful judgment is required to balance business objectives with ethical and regulatory considerations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency and fair competition, aligning with the principles of responsible business conduct expected of a global company like Foxconn. By seeking independent legal counsel and engaging in open dialogue with all relevant stakeholders, including potential competitors and regulatory bodies if applicable, the company demonstrates a commitment to ethical sourcing and market integrity. This proactive stance mitigates risks of future disputes, regulatory scrutiny, and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on securing the contract without considering its broader implications would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to accusations of anti-competitive practices, potentially violating competition laws and regulations. Such an approach disregards the principle of fair play in the market and could result in legal challenges, fines, and a damaged reputation. Another incorrect approach, which involves pressuring the supplier to accept unfavorable terms to gain an advantage, would be ethically unsound and could be construed as exploitative, potentially violating labor laws or ethical sourcing guidelines. This undermines the supplier relationship and creates a foundation for future conflict. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying potential conflicts of interest and ethical dilemmas. This involves understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the specific jurisdiction and the nature of the business transaction. Subsequently, seeking expert advice, such as legal counsel, is crucial. The next step involves evaluating the potential impact of different courses of action on all stakeholders, including the company, suppliers, competitors, and the market. Finally, choosing the option that upholds ethical principles, complies with regulations, and promotes long-term sustainable business practices is paramount. Question 19. Upon reviewing a critical supplier's compliance report, credible allegations of substandard working conditions and potential labor law violations have surfaced. This supplier is essential for an upcoming high-volume production run. What is the most appropriate course of action to uphold ethical standards and ensure regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately terminate the contract with the supplier to avoid any association with potential violation, regardless of the impact on production schedules. Option B. Initiate an immediate, thorough investigation into the allegations, engage with the supplier to understand and address any confirmed issues, and explore alternative sourcing options if remediation is not feasible or timely. Option C. Place the order with the supplier while internally flagging the allegations for future review, hoping the issues will be resolved independently. Option D. Dismiss the allegations as unsubstantiated rumors, given the supplier's critical role in meeting production targets, and proceed with the order as planned. The correct answer is B. Initiate an immediate, thorough investigation into the allegations, engage with the supplier to understand and address any confirmed issues, and explore alternative sourcing options if remediation is not feasible or timely. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in a corporate environment, particularly within a global manufacturing context like Foxconn. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for a critical component with the potential for significant ethical and regulatory breaches. The pressure to meet production targets can create a temptation to overlook or downplay supplier compliance issues. Careful judgment is required to ensure that short-term gains do not lead to long-term reputational damage, legal penalties, and a violation of Foxconn's own ethical standards, and any applicable labor laws or international standards it adheres to. The correct approach involves a systematic and principled decision-making process that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This means thoroughly investigating the allegations, engaging with the supplier to understand and rectify the situation, and if necessary, seeking alternative suppliers while adhering to established procurement policies. This approach represents best professional practice because it upholds Foxconn's commitment to responsible sourcing and ethical business operations. It aligns with principles of due diligence, supplier accountability, and the avoidance of complicity in unethical labor practices, which are increasingly mandated by global supply chain regulations and corporate social responsibility expectations. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the allegations without proper investigation. This failure to act constitutes a dereliction of due diligence and can lead to complicity in human rights abuses or labor law violations, exposing Foxconn to severe legal repercussions, reputational damage, and loss of consumer trust. Another incorrect approach is to immediately terminate the contract without attempting to engage the supplier or understand the root cause of the issue. While decisive action is sometimes necessary, a hasty termination without due process can be seen as unprofessional and may violate contractual obligations or lead to unnecessary supply chain disruptions without addressing the underlying problem. Furthermore, it misses an opportunity for supplier development and improvement. A third incorrect approach is to proceed with the order while internally acknowledging the allegations, but hoping they are not true or will be resolved later. This is a clear ethical failure, as it knowingly risks engaging with a supplier potentially in violation of ethical and legal standards, thereby making Foxconn complicit. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that includes 1. Information gathering. Actively seek and verify all relevant information regarding the allegations. 2. Risk assessment. Evaluate the potential legal, ethical, and reputational risks associated with continuing the relationship. 3. Stakeholder consultation. Engage with relevant internal departments, legal, compliance, procurement, and potentially external experts. 4. Solution development. Explore options ranging from supplier remediation to alternative sourcing, considering feasibility and impact. 5. Decision and implementation. Make a well-reasoned decision and implement it with clear communication and follow-up. Question 20. Quality control measures reveal a minor but consistent deviation in the assembly process for a key component, potentially impacting its long-term durability, though current performance metrics remain within acceptable limits. The production line is under significant pressure to meet a critical delivery deadline for a major client. Option A. Instruct the quality control team to adjust the testing parameters to accommodate the observed deviation, thereby ensuring the current batch passes inspection and can be shipped on time. Option B. Document the deviation internally but proceed with the shipment as planned, assuming the impact on durability is negligible and unlikely to be detected by the client. Option C. Expedite the shipment of the current batch to meet the client's deadline, with a plan to address the deviation in subsequent production runs after the immediate pressure has subsided. Option D. Halt production of the affected component. Initiate a thorough root cause analysis to identify the source of the deviation, and implement corrective actions before resuming production and shipment. Correct answer is D. Halt production of the affected component. Initiate a thorough root cause analysis to identify the source of the deviation, and implement corrective actions before resuming production and shipment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate production demands with long-term quality and compliance. The pressure to meet targets can lead to overlooking critical deviations, which, if unaddressed, can result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and potential harm to end users. The core of the challenge lies in making a judgment call that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory adherence over short-term expediency. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified quality issue through a structured, documented process. This aligns with the principles of good manufacturing practices, GMP, and internal quality management systems, which are implicitly expected in a company like Foxconn operating in global supply chains. By initiating a root cause analysis and implementing corrective actions, the team demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement and risk mitigation, thereby upholding the company's reputation and ensuring product integrity. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining trust with clients and regulatory bodies. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate shipment without proper investigation would represent a failure to adhere to internal quality control protocols and potentially to industry-specific standards that Foxconn is expected to follow. This could lead to the distribution of non-conforming products, increasing the risk of customer complaints, product recalls, and regulatory scrutiny. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to conceal the issue, is a severe ethical breach and a direct violation of transparency principles expected in business operations. This could lead to severe legal repercussions and a complete erosion of trust. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on blame rather than resolution, is counterproductive and undermines a collaborative problem-solving environment, hindering the identification of systemic issues and preventing effective corrective actions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the problem, assessing its potential impact, and then evaluating available solutions against established protocols, ethical guidelines, and regulatory requirements. This involves seeking clarification, documenting findings, and escalating issues as necessary. The framework should prioritize data-driven decisions, transparency, and a commitment to long-term quality and compliance over short-term gains.